Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the constellation Orion. So the constellation Orion is the first of the winter constellations we're going to learn about. The reason it's the first one is because it is the most distinguishable. It's very bright. It's one of my favorite constellations in the sky to see, and it actually looks the way it's supposed to in the sky. It's very pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and flip to this screen. So this shows you the winter constellations, and so the main one that you're going to see up here is Orion. So there's first thing I want to do is I want to tell you the stories behind Orion. So there's two stories. The first one has Orion, and he's known as the Hunter. This is really how he's put into the sky. And in this story, his father is Jupiter. I'm sorry, his father is Neptune, or Poseidon, and then his mother is Queen Uriel. She is the queen of the Amazonian women, and he's their son, which means he's a demigod. And since his father is a god and his mother is a queen of the Amazons, he's Orion grows up and he becomes a very talented hunter, and that's his passion in life is hunting. And he goes around and he tries to kill every single type of animal he can. That's his goal in life is to at least kill one of everything. And he is very talented at it, and he likes to boast about how he can kill anything there is. Well, the gods and goddesses they get upset with Orion for how boastful he is that he can kill everything, and he's killing all their animals. So they decide to get even with Orion. So they decide the best way to get even with him is to humiliate him. So here's Orion, and he's boasting how he can kill the biggest bear, the fiercest lion, uh, you know any type of fierce creature. And so they decide the best way to get even with him is to have a little wimpy, pathetic creature come and kill Orion. So what they decide to do is send a little scorpion, just the size of your pinky finger, and the little scorpion comes up to Orion and stings him on his foot, and Orion falls over and is dead. And it's very humiliating for Orion to be killed by such a little wimpy animal when he's boastful, saying he can kill absolutely anything. And so when you look for Orion in the sky, he's known as the hunter. He's actually hunting the bull Taurus. And since he was killed by the scorpion, he's very afraid of the scorpion. So the way the story works in the sky is as Orion is setting in the sky, the scorpion, Scorpio, is actually rising in the sky. And the reason that is because Orion is always running away from the scorpion because he's a little fraidy cat and he's afraid of it. So as Orion rises, Scorpio sets, and as Orion sets, Scorpio rises, always running away from the scorpion. That's the first story. I actually like the second story better. The second story is a little longer and there's a little more details to it. So the second story involves a couple different people. It also involves the gods, of course. But it starts with this little old woman. She's a peasant woman, and she's actually a widow. When she was younger, this peasant woman, she was married, and she's very, very, very poor, and her husband was very, very, very poor, and he was a fisherman, and he died soon after they got married. He died soon after, out on a boat trying to go fishing and make some money for his wife. He died. He drowned in a sea wreck. So she was widowed very early on, and she was never, ever, ever able to have a child. And that was, this woman's biggest dream in life is to raise a family. And this woman is the sweetest woman you will ever meet. She doesn't have much, but if she could ever help you out in any way, if in any way she could, she would. She's the type of woman that you're walking on the street, and you feel bad. She sees you and she just comments on how pretty you look that day or how handsome you are, and she always just makes you smile just by interacting with her for a few minutes. So everyone of the town absolutely loves this woman, and the gods hear about how sweet this woman is. And you have Neptune and Jupiter, or Zeus. I'm sorry, Neptune and Zeus, and Mercury as well. They get together, or Hermes. Mercury is Hermes. I'm going kind of back and forth between Roman and Greek mythology, so sorry for the names, but Neptune, Zeus, and Hermes, they get together and they decide that they're going to actually make this woman a baby. So that's what they do. They, I don't know how they made a baby, but they do. They make this little baby. And so they make this baby, And then they decide they're gonna, they want to give this woman her dream in life. So they wait till it's dark, and then they put this baby in a little basket, and they write a little note, and then they go and knock on the door of this little hut where this woman lives. And the woman answers the door, and she looks out the door, and she doesn't see anyone, but she starts hearing this baby crying. So she opens the door completely, and she sees this cute little baby sitting in this basket, laying in this basket on her front porch. And she just goes, "Well, aren't you just the cutest little thing? Where are your parents?" And so she picks the baby up, and she sees there's a note attached to it. And the note says, "We are no longer able to take care of our baby. Please raise him like he is your own." And she says to the baby, "Well, I'm so sorry your parents can't take care of you, but I will. I'll raise you as my own, and you'll never go unwanted." And the gods are, over behind a wall watching, and they're giving each other high fives because they were able to give this baby to this woman. So this boy, his name is Orion, and as this boy is growing into a teenager, he is a very gifted, very talented young man, and that makes sense considering that who made him. So he doesn't know that the gods made him, and neither does this woman. She just loves this boy. But Orion he's very, very talented at everything he does. And as he's growing up, he sees how hard his mother is working, and she's becoming really, really old. And as a 6 to 8 year old child, he tells his mother that he wants to go get a job to help pay for the food for the family. So he goes and he becomes a blacksmith apprentice. And so Orion, he's a blacksmith apprentice, and he's growing stronger and stronger and taller every single day. Because think about what it'd be like to work as a blacksmith. He's working with hammers, anvils, metal, hot metals, tools. So he's getting stronger by doing this, and he's very, very skilled at his craft. And after a few years, Orion becomes the best blacksmith in all the land. So Orion becomes this great blacksmith, and he gets to be so well known that he actually gets called upon by Hephaestus or Vulcan, who is the god who helps, who makes Zeus's thunderbolts, lightning bolts. Sorry. So Hephaestus actually asked Orion for his help to help him build his subterranean lair under the volcano. And so Orion goes and helps Hephaestus do that, and he meets lots of friends. He meets the Cyclops. And then there's this another guy that he meets and becomes really best friends with him. His name is Kedalion. He's this short little creature that helps Hephaestus with his work. And after Orion finishes his work for Hephaestus, it's been a while. It's been a little bit of time, a couple of years, and he decides he really misses his mother, so he goes back home to see his mother. And when he comes back home to see his mother, he walks in and he realizes that she's become very, very, very old, and she's about to die. And his mother, she sees Orion. She's so happy, and that was her one wish in life, is to be able to raise Orion and to see him become the adult he is. And she's very happy that he's become such a strong and powerful blacksmith, and he's such a good person. And so that she dies, and she's very, very happy in her death. And Orion decides, he's going to end up staying in this town. So he's in this town of Chios, is where he grew up. Chios is a region in Greece. It's an island in Greece, very beautiful. And so Orion lives in the hut where he grew up, and he becomes the blacksmith. He goes back to the blacksmith he worked at, and he becomes the main blacksmith at the blacksmith shop. So one day, going through town, there's this carriage, and in this carriage, there's the princess of Chios, and her name is Merope, and this carriage breaks down in the middle of town, and the wheel just breaks. And luckily for the princess and her servants, she breaks down right in front of this blacksmith shop. And so she goes into the blacksmith shop to ask the blacksmith if the blacksmith can fix her wheel. And as she walks in, she sees Orion. So Orion now, he's probably about 18 years old, and he's been working as a blacksmith, since he was like 6 to 8 years old. And so he's been working with these heavy metals, and he is chiseled. it looks like he's made of metal because he's been working for such a long time with these heavy tools. So she walks in, and Orion has been working hard over this hot anvil, and she sees him, and she just falls in love instantly. And Orion looks up, and he sees her, and he falls in love instantly. So they start talking, and Orion says, well, of course I can fix the wheel. And he goes out and he fixes the wheel in just a matter of moments. And the princess gets back into her carriage and is about to take off when Merope puts her head out the window and says, I have to see you again. Meet me down by the castle lake, the lake outside of the castle at midnight. So Orion goes and he meets with Merope that night, and they just sit down by the lake under this big tree, and they just have a beautiful night, just talking all night long and falling more and more in love. And then at the end of the night, right before the sun rises, they decide that they're going to meet again the next night. And so they go home and they go about their daily business. That night, they come back down to the lake, and then they talk some more, and they're falling more madly in love the next night. Finally, after the second night, Orion says, he can't stand to be without Princess Merope. Merope. So he tells her that, he wants to marry her. And the princess says, well, I would love to marry you, but you have to ask my father first. Come up to the castle and come up the castle tonight, and I'll tell my father, and you can come up and ask him for my hand in marriage. So the princess goes home, and she talks to her father about marrying the blacksmith. So how do you think that conversation is going to go? So what do you think the king is going to say to his daughter wanting to marry the blacksmith of the town after knowing him for 2 nights? So obviously the king does not like this, and so he grounds his daughter and says, you can't leave this castle. You're grounded. You're not leaving again. I don't trust you. There's no way you're marrying the blacksmith. So later on that night, Orion comes up to the castle and knocks on the gate and tells the guards that he's there to see the king about asking for Merope's hand in marriage. And the king comes down and says, no, you're not allowed to marry her. Leave. You're just the blacksmith. So Orion goes home, and he's very, very agitated, and he's very, very angry and upset because he just loves her so much. So he decides he's going to actually try to steal Merope. So that's what he does. Later on that night, he goes up to the castle and tries to sneak in, and of course he gets caught. So he gets sent down to the dungeons, and the king hears about Orion trying to sneak in to steal Merope. So he's very upset. He's very angry, and he wants to get even with Orion somehow. So he decides he figures out this way to get even. So the next day, later that night, he calls the guards to bring Orion up to his main room to the throne room in his castle. And he tells Orion that he's very upset with Orion trying to steal his daughter, his only daughter who he loves so much. And he just doesn't understand how knowing each other only after 2 days they're ready to get married. So he says, well, Orion, you're just a blacksmith. Please tell me, if I let you have my daughter's hand in marriage, you got to tell me how you're going to support her. What makes you think you're good enough for my daughter? And so he has Orion sit down next to the fire on this couch and just start talking to him about how he can support his daughter. And as he's doing that, he says, well, Orion, you must be thirsty after being in the dungeon. And he starts pouring Orion some wine. And this continues on, and Orion just keeps talking to the king, telling him how much he loves his daughter. And every few minutes, the king keeps pouring more and more wine into Orion's glass, and Orion keeps drinking. And eventually, he drinks so much wine that he actually passes out. As Orion passes out, the king decides this is his chance to get even. So he goes over to the fire, and in the fire, he's got this hot skewer. And he takes that skewer out, and he decides he takes the skewer and he pokes it into Orion's eyes as Orion is passed out. And Orion wakes up just screaming in agony, just saying, you've taken my eyes, you've taken my eyes. Why do you do that? And the king says, there's no way I would ever let you marry my daughter. I banish you from the town. Leave this very moment. And so the guards force Orion to leave, and this just infuriates Orion so much because he just loves Merope so much, and the king just doesn't understand, and he's taken his eyes now. So he is furious at the king, and he decides he's gonna spend the rest of his life getting even. He's gonna do whatever it takes to get even. So Orion is banished, and Orion doesn't know what to do. He just knows he's got to get back to Merope because he loves her so much. But since Orion is so special, remember that the gods are the ones that made Orion. Since he loses his sense of sight, his other senses become better. So as he's leaving town, he starts hearing this clanging of a hammer on an anvil, and he realizes what he's hearing. He's actually hearing the Cyclops' hammer on the anvil of where the Cyclops lives with Hephaestus. So he follows that sound to his friend Hephaestus, who is again god of the volcanoes, god of volcanoes that makes Zeus's lightning bolts. So he goes to see Hephaestus, and he asks his friend if he can restore his eyesight. And Hephaestus says he does not have the power to do that, but he knows a god that can. And he sends him to find Apollo, the sun god. The sun god can restore Orion's sight. So Orion doesn't know how to get there, so one of his friends that lives with Hephaestus, Kedalion, the short little man, he borrows Kedalion, and Kedalion takes him to find Apollo. So finally, after some time, Orion finds Apollo's temple, and he goes in. And when Apollo is in the temple, Apollo is actually not alone. His twin sister, Diana, in Roman mythology, or Artemis in Greek mythology, is there as well. And Orion goes up to Apollo, and he says to Apollo, Apollo, please, I need your help. I need you to restore my eyesight. And Apollo, at first, he's very upset with Orion because he's interrupting his conversation with his sister. But what happens next is Diana, or Artemis, she looks at Orion, and she feels this connection with him, and she just thinks he's a very beautiful man. And she tells Apollo to hear this man out. It sounds like there's something very serious going on. So Orion proceeds to tell Apollo about the situation he's in and how much he loves Princess Merope and how he needs his eyesight back so he can go and get her. And as Orion is telling the story, Diana is looking at Orion, and she's falling in love with Orion from hearing this story. This guy is, he looks really good. He's a beautiful man, and he just seems like such a romantic. And she ends up falling in love with him. So Diana tells Apollo to restore his eyesight because this is for love. And so Apollo does. He restores Orion's eyesight. And Orion's very excited. He's about to open his eyes, and his sight will be restored, and he can go and get the princess. And as he opens his eyes, the first thing he sees is the goddess Diana. And as he sees Diana, he realizes that he loves Diana. And he's like, Princess Merope, who? Never mind. Diana, how's it going? So Diana and Orion start hanging out together. And this makes Apollo very, very upset because Apollo really, really loves his sister and doesn't like that Orion is moving in and taking the love of Diana. So Orion and Diana start spending a lot of time together. And Diana is known as she's a virgin goddess. She's the goddess of the moon. And Apollo's very, very upset with Orion. He decides after the two of them, after Orion and Diana have been spending a couple days together, that he's got to somehow get rid of this Orion character. So one morning, Orion and Diana, they're sleeping on the beach just next to each other. And it's just a beautiful morning. And Diana wakes up and she sees Orion sleeping there. And she just wants to go get breakfast for him so he can have breakfast on the beach. And so she gets up and she goes up to Apollo's temple to get breakfast. And as soon as she leaves, Orion actually wakes up and he decides it's such a beautiful morning that he's going to go for a swim. And so Apollo decides this is a chance to get even. So as Diana comes up to the temple, Apollo says, hey, what's going on, sis? I've got a bet for you. And Diana, she's very, very competitive, and so she asks Apollo what the bet is. Apollo says, "Do you see that rock way out there in the sea? I bet you can't hit it with this bow and arrow." And so Diana says, "Are you kidding me? I can hit that very easily." And then Apollo says, "No, you can't. I double dog dare you." And Diana says, "Well, okay, fine. Give me the bow and arrow." So she shoots, and she hits the rock just square right on the top. And then she says, "See, I told you I could do it." And then Apollo says, "Well, you might want to go down and see what that rock actually was." And he starts laughing and he disappears. And Diana doesn't think anything of it. She's just like, "What? What is he talking about?" So she makes breakfast for Orion, and then she goes back. She goes down to the beach, and she realizes that Orion is not on the beach. And then she looks out in the ocean, in the sea, and she sees that Orion floating there dead with an arrow in his head. So Apollo tricked Diana into shooting Orion, the one man she's ever loved. And Diana is so upset by this that she actually puts Orion in the sky so that she can always look upon his beautiful body from him being a blacksmith. So those are the two stories of Orion. Now I'm actually going to show you where he is in the sky and the names of the stars that make up Orion. All right, so the way you find Orion in the sky, you look for the hourglass or figure 8. So the easiest part of Orion to see is his belt. So there are 3 stars angled upward, and that makes his belt. And then there's a really, really bright star in his top right shoulder, and then a really, really bright star in his lower left knee. So there's his belt, and then you have his right shoulder and his left knee. And that's what you look for those bright things. So look for an hourglass with a 3 belt star in the middle, and a bright star on the right side. Or when you're looking at him, the bright star in his shoulder would be on the left side, because remember, he's looking at us and we're looking at him, so it's opposite. And then in his knee as well. So in this picture, it's in the a little to the right of center is where Orion is. So if we look over here, you have this really bright star right here, and then it comes to there, and then these 3 stars make up his belt, and we come there and there. So I call that the hourglass of Orion. So Orion is depicted as being a hunter in the sky. And so a hunter always has a sword on him as well. So on his belt here, he's got this sword sheath. And in the sword sheath, you got something else that's really big and cool to see, and that's Orion's nebula. So Orion's nebula is going to be about right here. I'll show you that coming up in another image. But that's Orion. So here's the outline of Orion. So Orion's nebula is going to be right about here. So here you see Orion. Sometimes he's depicted as having a club in his hand or a sword. Sometimes he's got a dead animal right here. He's about to club in the head to kill it. There's different ways of depicting him in the sky. But out of all these stars in Orion, there's going to be 3 that we need to know. We need to know what the star is called in his top right shoulder. That's called Betelgeuse. We need to know what the star is called in his bottom left knee, and that's called Rigel. And then we need to know about Orion's nebula. This arrow is a little high. Orion's nebula is actually going to be right about here, but I'll show you that coming up as well. So hopefully you can see it in this image right there. So there's 3 stars in his sword sheath here. Orion's nebula is the second one. The middle one is Orion's nebula. So this is actually taken from the Hubble. This one, it does a really good job of showing you the color. The reason I love Orion so much is because it actually does have a bunch of colored stars to it. So stars do have color to them. They're not all white. They can be blue and they can be red. So the star in the top right shoulder, the star up here, notice how it has a red color. So that red color is Betelgeuse. And then if you look down here in his left knee, you have a really bright blue star. That blue star is actually called Rigel. The way I remember them, Betelgeuse starts with a B, therefore it's red. Rigel starts with an R, therefore it's blue. That's how I remember it. I just remember it's opposite. They're opposites. So Betelgeuse is the red star, Rigel is the blue star. You can remember it however any way you want. That's just how I remember it. It just makes sense to me that they're opposite. And then this right here, so you can see there's 3 stars, 1, 2, 3 in the sword sheath. This one right here, the middle one, that's Orion's nebula. So we're going to need to know Betelgeuse, Rigel, and Orion's nebula. Those are the stars that make up Orion, the hunter. These are all the stars' names that have proper names. Again, we don't need to know these. Not all of them. We need to know Betelgeuse, Rigel, and Orion's nebula. That's it. But these are the other ones in case you're interested in them, but you don't need to know them. Those 3 are the only ones we're going to need. So this is how Orion's depicted in the sky. I just mentioned this. So here you can see he has a club, and then he has an animal, and then up here you can see Taurus, the bull, charging down at him. We're actually going to talk about Taurus later on this week, but I will not have time to talk about him today. So Canis Major and Canis Minor are very simple constellations, and they go along with Orion. I'm actually going to start my video lecture on Thursday by talking about Canis Major and Canis Minor. There isn't really any mythology that goes with them, so we'll go ahead and mention this. So Canis Major and Canis Minor are known as the big dog and little dog, and those are just Orion's hunting dogs. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it here in this image. So a hunting dog, think about if you have a dog, a hunting dog, and it's well trained. A well-trained dog, where is it always at if it's going on a walk or something? Where is the dog always at? Well, hopefully you realize that the dog it's not next to you. It's not in front of you. A well-trained dog is always going to be at the back of your feet, always right behind you, because a well-trained dog knows that you're the alpha, you're in control, you're in command. So it stays behind you. So that's where Orion's hunting dogs are. There's the big dog, Canis Major, who is behind Orion, and Canis Major has the brightest star in the night sky, which is Sirius. I know you read that from our reading today. And then the other dog is called Canis Minor. So Canis means dog, Major means big, Minor means little. So there's a big dog and there's a little dog. So the little dog is just this cute little puppy dog that is always, he isn't as well trained yet as Canis Major, but he's getting there. So he's still behind Orion, but he likes to kind of run off on his own. So he's not right up next to Orion. He's a little bit off, but he's just a cute little puppy dog. So I'm going to talk about Canis Major more and Canis Minor and actually show you what they look like on Thursday. But for now, we mentioned, I talked about Orion. I mentioned the 3 things you need to know: Betelgeuse, Rigel, and Orion's nebula. Showed you what it looked like and told you mythologies. So that's going to be enough for today. Thursday, I'll show you Canis Major, Canis Minor, and I'll start talking about Taurus and show you that. And then we'll finish up Taurus and the Pleiades on Friday. So thanks, guys, for listening, and I will see you later.